My name's Alison King. I'm one of the careers consultants here at Brunel University. I'm the careers consultant for design students, electronic engineering, education and the graduate school. This short talk is about online tests. It's part of a playlist of careers videos from which you can pick and mix topics that you particularly need help with at the moment. Let's get started then. What are online tests? There are two main types of tests that an employer might ask you to do before you get called for the next stage of the selection procedure. So this will be before you go for an interview or before you have an online video interview or a telephone interview. The two main types are situational judgment tests. Now that's about decision making. So you're given a variety of different scenarios and you have to make a decision about what you would do, what action you would take in each particular situation that you are told about. The next type of online test is an aptitude test. Now this is probably a bit more common than a situational judgment test, and that's when the employer has decided that they need candidates who have particular strengths in particular areas. The two most common types are numerical and verbal reasoning, but often employers, so for example my engineers often get asked to do logical reasoning tests, and different employers have particular types of aptitude tests that they want you to do before they'll put you through to the next stage of the selection process. Let's have a look at situational judgment tests, or SJTs. So this is an example of a situational judgment test question. If you want to read it, I suggest you pause this video now, read it and then come back. So pause now. Okay, welcome back. If you've taken the moment to read that question, you can see that at the top the question involves a situation that you might find in with this particular employer is probably a telecoms company and you're working for the call centre. You're asked what you would do. You're given 4 different options. In this particular test, you would only be asked for the one action that you would take. In some SJT tests, you're asked to rank your decisions in order. So you actually have to say what action you're most likely to take and what action you are least likely to take. In this particular one, the agreed consensus is that number 4 is the correct answer for that. But how do you do well in SJTs? How can you prepare for them? It is notoriously difficult to prepare for SJTs, but here's my words of wisdom. If you know the employer well, then you can work out what they value, what competencies they prefer. So as a result of knowing what the employer is looking for, what the employer values, you yourself can choose answers in the SJT that reflect those values and competencies. For example, if throughout the employer's website they've talked about the importance of teamwork and collaboration, you might well choose an answer that shows that you're a good team player and that you collaborate effectively with others. So get to know the employer. One employer once said to me, have a look at the profiles of the people currently doing the job for that organisation that you're being interviewed or applying for. So that's a little tip. Read the profiles online. That may help as well. So that's SJT success. Now here we've got an example of an aptitude test question, which is for numerical reasoning. Again, if you want to read this question, why don't you pause me now and then come back to me in a moment and I'll talk a little bit more about how to do well in numerical tests. So pause now. Okay, welcome back for those of you who've had a look at this quite nasty numerical reasoning question here. You can see there's a lot of information on the screen. It does take a little while to read each of these questions carefully. There's a lot of data there. I think I worked out the answer at £2,120.43, but that was my answer. You might have disagreed with me. You've got to read it very carefully. There are prices from 2 different companies on that screen and you've got to compare and contrast them. But it's fairly basic maths. Remember, you can use a calculator nearly always on these sorts of tests. You can use a calculator, so to have one that's working by your side. Revise basic maths, percentages, ratios, graphs, stuff like that. The sort of stuff that if you're educated in Britain, you probably did at GCSE level. So those of you who've gone beyond to do A level and further maths will find it quite easy on the whole. Now, there is a very useful section on Blackboard Learn about this. Okay, so here we are on the Blackboard Learn website. The Ask section here has a very useful section for people preparing for numerical reasoning tests. I'm scrolling down to go to Maths and Numeracy resources. And if we scroll down again, you can see there is a guide to successfully completing a numeracy aptitude test. I strongly recommend that you have a go at doing that practice test. If you find that you are having problems with maths, then you can always book for one of the sessions run by Ask to help with maths skills. So remember that you can always use Ask if you need help with maths. So that's a useful little tip. I'll also show you later further links to practice tests that you can do. Okay. All right, so that was numerical reasoning. Let's move on to verbal reasoning. And as with numerical reasoning, if you want to have a go at doing this question, why don't you pause me now, something my husband would love to do, and have a go at verbal reasoning, this particular test, and I'll tell you the answer in a moment. So bye-bye for now, and then welcome back. I hope you had a go at doing this. The answer is cannot say, okay? There is no information about children eating healthily performing better in exams. It may be true, but we don't know that for sure. You can only base your answer on the information given in the text. Now, top tips for verbal reasoning test, a bit more difficult for than numerical reasoning. It is a deliberately difficult text that you have to read in a verbal reasoning test. It's written in a complicated style. So make sure you read it really slowly, really carefully. Just read it again and again and again until you're sure you know what it means. You can practice reading things like editorial sections on decent newspaper websites. The BBC website, some of the news sections there is useful as well, just to help improve your verbal reasoning. But that's the end of verbal reasoning. Let's have a look at my top tips for aptitude tests, okay? Now, the picture on the right-hand side of the screen is of someone practicing the piano, and it's the same with aptitude tests. Practice as much as possible. Practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, but it will definitely improve your scores. And in a moment, I'm going to show you where you can find lots of practice tests that you can undertake. Now, when you first do a test, try to get it right first. So aim for accuracy first, and then practice under time conditions. You will almost certainly have to do a test under timed conditions. So make sure that you can do it within those time conditions before you actually do the real test. Read the question first before you read the passage, particularly with verbal reasoning. Know what that you've got to find out about in that passage, and then you can try and find the relevant words in that verbal reasoning passage. Allow for questions to get harder, so you might be lulled into a false sense of security at the beginning, thinking, oh, this is easy. They will get more difficult towards the end. The other final tip is to try eliminating the wrong answers if you can't do it. Sometimes, if you boil it down to 2 out of 4 answers, you might be able to find the right one. Okay, so here we've got the careers section of the PDC website. Now, this particular section, CVs, applications and interviews, has a section on psychometric tests. If you click on that, you will see a link to different types of tests and practice links that you can do. So we've just been looking at aptitude tests and situational judgment tests. You'll see there's a number of different other types of tests you can look at here. If you want to access practice numerical reasoning or verbal reasoning, logical or critical thinking tests, just click on this section and a large number of practice tests will appear. You can just click on those links, have a go and practice them. It's particularly useful to practice a test for which you know the answers, because then you know whether you're getting it right or not. Some of these, particularly assessment day and job test prep, have got example tests that you can do and will give you the answers. But be warned, they will try to encourage you to buy some of their practice tests. On the whole, you probably don't need to buy them. It's your decision. They're not that expensive. But there are lots of free ones there on all these websites here, so I'd recommend that you have a look at those and practice those tests.